The political world is vibrating with an intensity we haven't seen in years because Donald Trump has officially lost his composure following the latest reports out of the Middle East. It isn't just a minor diplomatic spat anymore, but a full-blown confrontation that is shaking the foundation of international relations as Iran has once again slammed the door on any potential ceasefire. You are about to discover exactly why this rejection has sent shockwaves through Washington and what it means for the global landscape moving forward. This is the breakdown of a geopolitical explosion that is happening right now, so let me give you the unfiltered truth about this high-stakes standoff. If you are listening to this right now, help me prove something wrong. My Singaporean friend once told me that I wouldn't even reach 500 subscribers because he said people in our region aren't interested in deep-dive global politics. But I refuse to believe that because I know how intelligent and globally aware we Malaysians really are. Help me show him that we Malaysians are a community that values informed discussion and critical thinking, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button to join our growing movement. Assalamualaikum. Now, to understand why the former president is absolutely livid, you have to look at the sheer scale of the gamble he took during his time in office. Remember, his entire foreign policy doctrine was built on the idea that maximum pressure, economic sanctions, isolation, and unpredictable threats would eventually force Tehran to bow down or at least pick up the phone to talk. When Iran rejected the latest ceasefire proposal, it wasn't just a rejection of a diplomatic document, it was a rejection of the entire philosophy that Trump promoted for 4 years. For someone who thrives on the idea of the art of the deal, having a nation repeatedly walk away from the table isn't just policy disagreement, it is a direct assault on his professional identity. Think about the sheer frustration of a man who believes his personality alone can bend history. When you look at the recent reports coming out of the Iranian Foreign Ministry, it is clear they aren't even pretending to entertain the narrative that Washington is currently spinning. They have essentially told the international community that until certain conditions are met, the talks are dead on arrival. For a candidate currently navigating the turbulent waters of a new election cycle, this is a massive headache. He is trying to project an image of strength and control, but a foreign adversary openly defying proposals associated with his circle makes him look, at least to his critics, like his leverage has evaporated. We need to dive into the core of this tension. Why is Iran being so stubborn? From their perspective, the ceasefire proposals on the table right now aren't just about stopping fire, they are about shifting the geopolitical power balance in a way that they see as inherently hostile to their security interests. They are looking at the regional alliances, the presence of various foreign naval assets, and the internal political pressure within their own borders, and they have decided that staying the course is safer than entering a deal that they perceive as a trap. When you hear the rhetoric coming out of the Iranian leadership, they aren't speaking as a nation looking for a quick exit, they are speaking as a nation playing a long game, one that ignores the standard political timelines of Western elections. I remember talking to a friend of mine, a logistics expert who deals with regional trade, and he hit the nail on the head. He told me that in this part of the world, people don't measure time in election cycles, they measure it in centuries. That perspective shift is exactly what Trump is struggling with. He is a man of the moment, a man of the news cycle, a man who wants the headline today. When he faces an opponent that doesn't care about the news cycle and is willing to sit in a deadlock for years, he doesn't have a playbook for it. It is like a chess player trying to play against someone who keeps flipping the board over. Let's break down the yes ladder. You agree with me that global instability leads to higher fuel prices, right? You agree that when the Middle East is in flux, it impacts the shipping lanes in the Malacca Strait, don't you? And you definitely agree that we, as Malaysians, deserve to understand how these massive geopolitical moves affect our own cost of living. Because if you agree with those points, then you have to admit that watching Trump lose his cool over Iran isn't just gossip. It is a signal that the global economy is about to get a lot more volatile. Consider the contrast between the diplomatic approach and the confrontational approach. On one side, you have the current administration trying to whisper, cajole, and use back-channel mediators to get everyone to calm down. And on the other side, you have Trump, who wants to be the loudest voice in the room, threatening to tear up agreements or impose such heavy sanctions that a country simply collapses under its own weight. Iran is essentially calling that bluff. By rejecting the ceasefire, they are telling the world that they aren't afraid of the maximum pressure playbook anymore. This is a terrifying realization for those who invested heavily in that strategy, because if that tool no longer works, what is left in the toolbox? The options become increasingly limited, and that is where the real danger begins. Think about the rhetorical patterns. Every time Trump reacts to these rejections, he pivots immediately to blaming his domestic rivals, claiming that if he were in charge, this wouldn't be happening. It is a classic move, but the effectiveness of it is starting to wane. The electorate is getting smarter. They are beginning to realize that the geopolitical landscape is complex and isn't governed by a single man's personality. Whether you love his policies or hate them, the reality is that the Iranian response is evidence that some things are beyond his control. I recall a specific instance a few years back during a local town hall event here in KL. People were arguing about international trade, and someone stood up and said that personality matters more than policy. I disagreed then, and I disagree now. This situation with Iran proves that policy, national identity, and regional security interests are far more powerful than the personality of any single world leader. You can shout at a nation, you can sanction a nation, but you cannot force a nation to abandon what it perceives as its existential security needs. Why does this matter for you specifically? Because oil is the lifeblood of our economy here in Malaysia. When tensions rise in the Persian Gulf, the risk premiums on tankers go up. When risk premiums go up, the cost of refined petroleum products increases. When those costs increase, everything from the transport of our vegetables to the price of our electricity feels the squeeze. You are feeling this every time you go to the petrol station or the supermarket. The anger Trump feels isn't just political theater. It is a manifestation of a failing strategy that is ultimately making the global marketplace less predictable and more expensive for everyone. The rejection of a ceasefire is essentially a signal to the global markets that the status quo of hostility is the new baseline. Markets hate uncertainty. They can deal with bad news, but they cannot deal with, I don't know what happens next. By refusing to talk, Iran is creating the ultimate environment of uncertainty. This is exactly what Trump is reacting to. He knows that his base wants results. They want to see him as the dominant figure on the world stage. And when he is confronted with the reality that his leverage isn't working, he reacts with visible, public, and often unfiltered anger. We also have to look at the regional players. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, they are all watching this standoff with bated breath. They are in the uncomfortable position of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they align too closely with the American pressure campaign, they risk Iranian retaliation. If they soften their stance, they risk alienating their long-term security partners in the West. This isn't a simple two-player game. It is a massive, multidimensional chess match where everyone is trying to survive without getting caught in the crossfire. Is there any path forward? That is the big question. Many experts believe that a formal ceasefire is currently impossible because neither side can afford to look weak before their respective audiences. Trump needs to look tough to win his primary and general elections, and the Iranian government needs to look unyielding to maintain its internal legitimacy and its regional influence. It is a perfect storm of political incentives that make a peaceful resolution almost unreachable in the short term. This is why the rhetoric is only going to get hotter. You might be asking yourself, what is the ultimate endgame here? Is it a return to a new agreement? Is it an escalation of proxy conflicts? Or is it a long-term economic war of attrition? The answer is likely a combination of all three. We are witnessing the slow-motion collision of a rigid diplomatic policy with the fluid, chaotic reality of Middle Eastern power politics. Trump, who thrives on simple, punchy solutions, is absolutely out of his element here. He wants a win, he wants a signature on a document, and he wants a photo op that shows he brought peace. But peace in this region requires compromise, and compromise is the one thing that both Trump's base and the Iranian hardliners consider to be a cardinal sin. I remember watching an old documentary on the history of the region, and it struck me how many times leaders have tried to impose final solutions on these problems. It never works. History shows that the only things that last are the things that are built through tedious, boring, slow-moving negotiation. That is the opposite of the Trump style. He wants the deal, he wants it now, and he wants it on his terms. When he doesn't get that, he views the world as failing him, rather than realizing that he might be misreading the room. We are entering a phase where the rhetoric from both sides is going to become even more extreme. You are going to hear more talk of ultimate leverage, more talk of unprecedented sanctions, and more threats of total isolation. My advice to you, as someone watching this from the other side of the world, is to filter out the noise. Don't fall for the headlines that claim the world is ending tomorrow, but also don't fall for the headlines that claim everything is fine. The reality is somewhere in the messy, gray middle, where nobody is winning. Everyone is losing a little bit of their wealth, and the only thing growing is the potential for a miscalculation. The irony here is palpable. Trump came into politics as a self-proclaimed genius negotiator who could do what the career politicians couldn't. Yet here we are, years later, and the situation with Iran is arguably more volatile and less resolved than it was before he started. That is a difficult pill for his supporters to swallow, and it is a massive point of contention for his opponents. It just goes to show that in international relations, there are no shortcuts, there are no magic personalities, and there are certainly no deals that can be made if one side is fundamentally unwilling to even entertain the idea of losing anything. Think about the psychological toll this takes on the global community. When the most powerful military in the world and one of the most resilient, defiant nations in the Middle East are locked in a shouting match, everyone else has to duck. We have to reconsider our trade routes, we have to reconsider our fuel reserves, and we have to reconsider our diplomatic posture. This isn't just about two men or two nations, it is about the safety and stability of the entire international system. As we look toward the future, we have to be prepared for more volatility. If the ceasefire continues to be rejected, the only remaining tool for the American side, especially if Trump were to return to the presidency, would be to turn the dial up to 11. That means more sanctions, more naval pressure, and a higher risk of direct conflict. Is that what anyone actually wants? I don't think so. But that is the logical conclusion of the path we are currently on. You have now seen the full picture of why this is such a significant moment. The former president's anger isn't just about a broken deal, it is about the fundamental breaking of his reality. He is realizing that his influence has limits, and that is a dangerous realization for a man who has built his life on the idea that he is none. To summarize everything we have discussed, first, Iran's rejection of the ceasefire is a direct, calculated defiance of the maximum pressure policy that was the hallmark of the Trump era. Second, this volatility is directly leaking into our own economy, driving up costs and creating uncertainty in the energy markets that we rely on here in Malaysia. Finally, the path forward is looking increasingly treacherous because both sides have locked themselves into positions where compromise is seen as an act of weakness. If you found this breakdown valuable, and you want to keep staying informed about the reality of global politics, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below with your take on this. Do you think the diplomatic approach is dead? Or is there still a way back to the table? Let's keep the conversation going because your voice matters. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay informed.